101 wins, a fifth straight division title, a slew of contract extensions. A lot went right, but there will be no parade this time. The Braves season is over. The repeat bid coming to an end at the hands of the Phillies in the division series. BPTV, Cory McCartney, and Grant McAuley with you. And Grant, Dansby Swanson said it feels like failure. It was unexpected, and it was time stunning as the Braves suffered their earliest exit since 2019.
Yeah, it does feel like, a bit of a step back when you've won it all the year before. But this Braves club had to do an awful lot just to get themselves in position to get back into the National League Division Series, to win the National League East again. We all know what that story was. We watched it unfold pretty much from June the 1st on as the Braves had to erase that gigantic deficit in the National League East. They went toe-to-toe with the New York Mets. They really knocked them down, if not all the way out. In that final series between those two clubs, but then came a layoff and then came a series against a Phillies team that simply outperformed the Braves. So I know we're going to dive into all of the stuff that didn't go right in the division series, and trust me, there was plenty of it, and we all saw it. But this was a club that had to accomplish an awful lot just to get there. They're just not going to feel great about the fact that they had unfinished business. And when you have won it all not too long ago, you just kind of have to feel like this fell well short of the bar that this club has set. And that is something we heard all about on the day after the season ended from both Brian Snitker and Alex Anthopoulos.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic starting pitching, a lockdown bullpen, and timely hitting really personified this team after June 1st. They led the majors with runners in scoring position, 134 weighted run created plus. They led the majors in bullpen ERA, and they were third in the majors in rotation ERA after that June 1st date. They were 6 for 22 with runners in scoring position in the series losses in the LDS. Outside of Jackson Stevens, every reliever allowed at least one earned run. And minus Kyle Wright, the rotation had a 14.9 ERA. I mean, all those givens largely failed the series, Grant. I mean, all those things that we expected, those, real foundational pieces of the Braves during this run, a lot of those things just did not work out against the Phillies.
No, a lot of them didn't. But I think the number one thing you can look at is that the offense did not show up and was not able to go blow for blow with this Phillies team. And one of the reasons the Phillies were doing so well was the abject failure of the Atlanta starting rotation to meet and exceed the expectations that they'd set throughout the course of the season. Because save Kyle Wright, you got less than 8 innings out of your other 3 starting pitchers. And these weren't just some guys that you were hoping would be able to have some success in the postseason. We're talking about Max Fried. We're talking about Charlie Morton. We're talking about one of the most exciting rookies in the game in Spencer Strider. And you got next to nothing out of those 3 guys in the series. And sometimes that's the way it is. And some of that is what the Phillies did. And some of it's what the Braves were unable to do, I feel like, from the starting rotation standpoint. I really can't look at the bullpen and say this is a reason why the Braves didn't do too well, because that bullpen only got to come in and protect 1 lead. And the Braves had a lead for 3 innings of this entire series. That is just not a recipe for success. But if you're hitting differently, if your starting pitching is able to get you to the 5th or beyond more than just the one time that Kyle Wright did in the Game 2 win, I feel like we might be talking about a series that was coming back to Atlanta, at least tied up, with the Braves getting a chance to advance. But, all credit to the Phillies. They executed in every single phase of the game. And in every single phase of the game, you can look at the Braves and say something did not go according to plan, or several players were unable to perform to the level that they had set throughout the season, and in helping the Braves get there and playing like the club that they were, as opposed to the club that showed up in this series just unable to compete and contend with what the Phillies put on them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have expected Max Fried, Strider, and Morton to combine for 7 2/3 innings and 12 earned runs. I mean, nobody went deeper than 3 1/3, which Fried gave them in Game 1. All that being said, there were some pretty good individual efforts. I mean, I mentioned Travis d'Arnaud had 6 hits with 2 homers and 3 doubles. Matt Olson had 4 hits with 2 homers, 5 RBI. Ronald Acuna Jr. had 5 hits with a double. I'm not trying to take a silver lining approach here, but this obviously is something that Braves fans may have forgotten how to deal with in the afterglow of the World Series, is taking that step back and seeing the big picture after playoff frustration, because the extensions to Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Michael Harris II, and Spencer Strider, a core that's intact through at least 2025. I mean, the reality of all this is, as frustrating it is at the moment, these Braves are not going anywhere.
And I've told you this before, and I know that this is very little to help, take the sting out of a loss when, the expectation was, hey, we want to at least go back there to the World Series and have a chance to win it again, at least get the championship series and have a chance to punch your ticket to go to the World Series. I mean, anything beyond just a first round exit, which was something the Braves, I feel like, were plagued with for years and years and years. But I will say this. I'd much rather be in October figuring out, what to do and what didn't go wrong or what needed to go right and those kinds of things, than sitting at home and wondering how we're ever going to have a chance to go to October. Now, that might not sound like too much, and possibly it's not, but I feel like the Braves did give themselves a chance again to go on a run. They just came out flat. The Phillies did not, and they got beat in a series. And that in and of itself, I think, is the essence of October. It's not about who was the hottest team for the 162 games. That just gets you in the door. It's what you do once you get to the postseason, and the Braves proved that in 2021. So as you look back on the course of this season and all the things that it took to get there, I think you can take a lot of satisfaction out of that, and a lot of the expectations the Braves fans have is that this team will be at the top of this division year after year after year. But you know that there's more to happen after that, and that's what I feel like everybody's going to look back on and say, man, this was a club that just felt like it was better than it played in this series. And I would say that because it's true.
We're recording this just after Alex Anthopoulos and Brian Snitker had their end of the year availability. And we mentioned before we started doing the show that there just wasn't a lot to come out of it. And frankly, it's because there's not a lot for this team to do. The offseason questions, it's not a long list, but it is substantial, and it starts at shortstop. Dansby Swanson, of course, is a free agent after a career year in which he led the Braves with a 6.3 Fangraph WAR. He has firmly entrenched himself as a key leader on this team, which Anthopoulos and Snitker both reiterated during Sunday's availability. Obviously, he enters a prize class as shortstop with Trey Turner and Carlos Correa, has an estimated value of $24.8 million per spot track. Now, the speculation, obviously the nail biting, begins as to whether he will remain in Atlanta. Anthopoulos did reiterate that they'll keep as many players as they can from that free agent class, and that, of course, includes Swanson. And that includes, and I was a little surprised by this with the addition of Raciel Iglesias, closer Kenley Jansen, but everything starts and ends with what happens with Dansby Swanson over these coming months.
Yeah, and I feel like just everything's on the table. I mean, you're not going to close the door on having Kenley Jansen be part of your bullpen. I feel like as many great arms as you can get, and then you can figure out how you want to deploy them. But clearly, that's one of the many discussions to have, but it's not at the top of the heap for Alex Anthopoulos, because if you're looking at the stack of resumes or whatnot of what the Braves have done over the past 5+ seasons, I think Dansby Swanson is right there on the top because of everything you just said and everything he does mean to this club and has grown into a leader. I always feel like he had a role to play in the leadership and direction of this club, but if there was ever a time for him to absolutely prove it with both words and actions, and really more of the latter than the words. I mean, yeah, you talk to him separately and privately, but Dansby's not some demonstrative on-field generals, putting everybody out where they need to be, but he's somebody that people trust, somebody that people can come to. And throughout the course of a season in that clubhouse, that means an awful lot to that club. But then what he did on the field is what means the most. And that's what the Braves are going to be looking for, is somebody that can hold down that shortstop position, give you the great, defensive performance that Dansby did. And it seems like as a hitter, he has really been able to at least find whatever his level is. Will he have a bigger and better season than 2022 in the future? I don't know, maybe. But if this is who he is, then I feel like this is a player that you definitely want to have around. He has a knack for big moments. He's been there in some of the biggest moments for this club. It doesn't mean he's going to be able to deliver in every single postseason series, because I know he just had one at the plate that was as forgettable as they get. He and Austin Riley both were unable to show up and show out, offensively speaking, and that's something that hurt the Braves. But Dansby's a guy that I think, to a man, and you heard it after the loss on Saturday, everybody would love to have him back. From Brian Snitker to Travis d'Arnaud to Austin Riley to anybody else that got a microphone stuck in their face, this is a guy that means a lot to that club. But this is a very good shortstop class. And we looked at what happened last year. Trevor Story got 6 years and $140 million from the Red Sox. Javi Baez got a similar deal from the Detroit Tigers. Carlos Correa got $35 million a year from the Minnesota Twins. So that there's some talent out there, and maybe Xander Bogaerts is going to be in this mix. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see where all these guys go. You assume they're not all going back to the clubs that they're at, as far as the free agents that we know are out there this year. Trey Turner being high on that list as well. And just over the last couple of years, it's been kind of a lot of a rotational shortstops, moving around, if you will, a carousel of sorts. But you kind of hope that Dansby Swanson will just be able to get on the same spot of this ride and end up in the same destination and, stick around in Atlanta, because I still feel like it's a great fit for these two, and it's where Dansby wants to be. And it sounds like it's a club that would love to have him around for the foreseeable future as part of the great young core you mentioned that they've been locking down over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and if that 24.8 is the kind of the spectrum of a contract you're looking at from him, that would be a higher AAV than any of those deals that they've been handing out over the last year plus. But Adam Duvall is also a free agent. Jake Odorizzi, Robbie Grossman, Luke Jackson, who's recovering from Tommy John surgery. But this is without question the winter of Dansby, and everybody wants him back after the way things played out last season. Watching another star sign elsewhere, I know everyone would love to have him back in Atlanta. The season is over, but we are far from done here on BPTV, so we'll get that that hot stove percolating for you. So stick with us and subscribe, turn on those notifications, tell a friend. And also don't forget, you can find us on From the Diamond on 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, or wherever you find your podcast. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.